Also joined from London by i24 News European correspondent Jonathan Sacerdoti. Jonathan, good morning to you.
Good morning.
The G7 meeting concluding in Europe. At the end of the day, the two main things on the agenda were what?
Well, originally the group were meeting ahead of their summit that's coming up in June, but the foreign ministers from US, France, Britain, Germany, Italy, Japan and Canada were meeting there to discuss eastern Ukraine and the situation in the Middle East predominantly. Also up for discussion, though, were the ongoing nuclear negotiations with Iran, the spread of ISIS, increasing instability in Yemen, the lack of peace talks in the Middle East, and also Africa. So there was plenty on the agenda there, and you could hear from the statements after the meeting exactly what progress they made in certain of those different areas.
What progress would that be?
Well, the German foreign minister welcomed the decision by the UN Security Council, which placed an arms embargo on Houthi rebels in Yemen, but said that we are far away from a situation in which we're able to calm that situation, to de-escalate or find a political solution. So not essentially much hope there. Also discussed were climate change, challenging stability in Africa, he said, and maritime security. But he also commented on Russia, saying that there's no interest in isolating Russia, but Russia could only really expect international sanctions against it to be lifted only when it complies with the terms of a ceasefire with Ukraine. And the foreign ministers from the group of 7 countries all agreed on these points.
And these points, and you know, I think sanctions lifted and immediately, and then people brought to the table as something that we're going to be hearing a lot over the course of the next several months leading up to June. And Jonathan, was there any reaction from Russia or any kind of statements coming out in the last several days when it comes to that, when it comes to those issues?
Well, this is it. I think that, you know, what we're talking about there, as you've just heard in the studio, the discussion you're having, is the idea that this is just dependent on Russia's behavior regarding Ukraine. But as it can be seen, you know, concern over Russia's decision to sell missiles to Iran while the negotiations regarding the nuclear program are still ongoing somehow showed that really there is a bit more to it than is officially being said. The German foreign minister said that these steps could be misunderstood by one side or the other. So there's this sort of euphemistic language that somehow there's a lack of understanding of what's going on. And yet, while we wait for those nuclear talks to be concluded in June, and while we see so much criticism coming from all over the world, not least from Israel, we can understand how Russia's taking that opportunity once again to perhaps exploit what some see as a weakness in the Western position on what's going on vis-a-vis Iran and the nuclear threat in order to continue acting in quite a bold way. So that, yes, it's being excluded from this meeting, but nonetheless, it's still pursuing its foreign policy goals in a way that is actually quite terrifying to some in Europe and the rest of the world, and nothing seems to be stopping it.